There is a kind of person who reads more books than anyone in the room, who thinks 3 moves ahead in every conversation, who can dismantle any argument with surgical precision, and yet somehow always ends up serving someone less intelligent than them. If that image stirs something uncomfortable in you, stay here, because what I'm about to reveal is not just an idea, it is a mirror, and most people are too afraid to look into it. The world has sold you a beautiful lie. It told you that intelligence is the ultimate currency, that if you think clearly, analyze deeply, and understand the hidden patterns of life, power will naturally gravitate toward you. But look around. Look at the boardrooms, the political stages, the social hierarchies. The people at the top are not always the brightest. In fact, some of the most powerful individuals you will ever encounter operate with a kind of simplicity that would make a philosopher cringe. And here is the disturbing part. They are not winning despite their lack of depth. They are winning because of something the intelligent person refuses to do. Let me take you back to ancient Rome for a moment. There was a senator named Cicero. Brilliant. Possibly the greatest orator who ever lived. His mind was a cathedral of logic, rhetoric, and philosophical insight. He could see through the manipulations of tyrants. He could articulate justice with a beauty that moved armies of thought. And yet, when the real game of power unfolded, when Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, and later when Octavian began his ruthless climb, Cicero was outmaneuvered, exiled, and eventually murdered. His head and hands were nailed to the Roman Forum as a warning not to tyrants, but to thinkers, because Cicero made the fatal mistake. He believed that being right was the same as being powerful. He thought that truth, elegantly spoken, would always triumph over brute strategy. He was wrong. And this same mistake echoes through centuries, landing quietly in your life, in your career, in your relationships right now. The intelligent person's fatal flaw is this: they confuse understanding power with possessing it. They study it, they analyze it. They can explain exactly how influence works, how charisma is constructed, how hierarchies are maintained. But they never cross the threshold from theory into action. And the reason is not laziness. It is something far more insidious. It is pride disguised as principle. The intelligent mind looks at the raw mechanics of power, the flattery, the strategic alliances, the occasional moral compromise, and recoils. It whispers to itself, "I am above this. I should not have to play these games. My ideas should speak for themselves. My competence should be enough." And in that single moment of intellectual arrogance, the game is already lost. Think about this in your own life. How many times have you had the best idea in the room, but someone else got the credit because they knew how to present it, how to position themselves, how to make the right person feel important at the right time? How many times have you watched someone less qualified rise above you, not because they cheated, but because they understood something you refused to learn? This is not a flaw in the universe. This is a flaw in your strategy. And if that realization stings, good. It means you are ready for what comes next. The psychologist Robert Greene, who spent years studying the dynamics of power throughout history, observed something fascinating. He noticed that the most dangerous position for an intelligent person is not ignorance. It is half-knowledge. The person who knows nothing about power will stumble through life without expectation. But the person who understands power intellectually, yet refuses to engage with it practically, creates a kind of internal civil war. They resent the game but cannot stop watching it. They despise the players but secretly envy the results. And this internal conflict produces the most toxic emotion an intelligent person can carry: bitterness. Bitterness is what happens when intelligence meets impotence. It is the emotional signature of someone who can see the chessboard perfectly but refuses to move their pieces. If this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what comes next. Subscribe so you do not miss this journey. Now let me bring this closer to home. Picture someone you know, maybe someone you see in the mirror, who has spent years accumulating knowledge. They have read the books on leadership, on psychology, on strategy. They can quote Machiavelli and Marcus Aurelius in the same breath, but when it comes to the actual moments that define a career, a relationship, a life, they hesitate. They overthink. They wait for the perfect moment that never arrives. And while they are calculating, someone with half their understanding but twice their audacity steps forward and claims what was there for the taking. This is not a story about stupid people winning. It is a story about intelligent people losing. And the difference is crucial because it means the solution is not to become less intelligent, it is to become more complete. The ancient Greeks had a word for this completeness: Phronesis. It is often translated as practical wisdom, but it means something richer than that. Phronesis is the ability to know what is good and to act on that knowledge in the real world, with all its mess, its ambiguity, its moral grayness. Aristotle considered it the highest virtue, higher than pure theoretical knowledge, because it required courage. It required getting your hands into the soil of reality. Here is where the transformation begins. And I want you to listen carefully, because this is where most people get it wrong. The mistake is not that intelligent people avoid power. The mistake is that they approach power with the wrong framework entirely. They treat it as an intellectual puzzle to be solved, when in reality, power is a living relationship to be cultivated. Power is not something you figure out. It is something you embody. Let me explain what I mean. Think about the people in your life who have genuine influence. Not the loud ones, not the manipulative ones, but the ones who walk into a room and something shifts. You feel it before you can articulate it. Their power does not come from domination. It comes from a kind of presence, an alignment between what they know, what they say, and what they do. They do not just understand human nature, they engage with it. They do not just see the social dynamics, they participate in them. They have made peace with the fact that the world does not reward the person with the best ideas. It rewards the person who can make others believe in those ideas. And this is where Nietzsche becomes relevant. Nietzsche did not celebrate brute force. What he celebrated was the individual who could integrate all the contradictions of life, the darkness and the light, the ambition and the compassion, the strategy and the sincerity, into a unified self. He called this the will to power, but it had nothing to do with domination. It was the will to become fully yourself, to stop hiding behind intellectual superiority, to stop using your mind as a fortress against the world, and instead to use it as a bridge into the world. The practical application of this is simpler than you think, but it requires a kind of death, a death of the ego that says, "My intelligence alone should be enough." Here are the shifts that change everything. First, stop waiting to be recognized and start positioning yourself to be seen. This does not mean self-promotion in the shallow sense. It means understanding that visibility is not vanity, it is strategy. The greatest idea that nobody hears is worthless. Second, learn the language of emotion. Intelligent people tend to communicate in logic, in data, in carefully constructed arguments. But human beings are not moved by logic. They are moved by stories, by feeling, by the sense that someone understands them. If you want to lead, you must learn to speak to the heart before you speak to the mind. Third, and this is the hardest one, accept imperfection. The intelligent person waits until their plan is flawless, until they have accounted for every variable. But power belongs to those who act with incomplete information. The willingness to be wrong, to adjust, to fail publicly and recover, this is the muscle that separates those who understand power from those who wield it. But there is a secret still more profound that few people ever discover. The deepest mistake intelligent people make when seeking power is that they seek it at all. Let me explain before you think I am contradicting everything I have just said. The people who hold lasting, meaningful, transformative power are never the ones who chased it. They are the ones who became so aligned with their purpose, so committed to their craft, so deeply connected to the people they serve, that power attached itself to them like gravity. This is what the Taoists understood when they wrote about Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. It is not passivity. It is the opposite of passivity. It is being so fully engaged with reality that you no longer need to force outcomes, you attract them. Consider this: every historical figure who chased power for its own sake eventually lost it. Napoleon ended on an island. Alexander wept because there were no more worlds to conquer, then died at 32. Every corporate climber who backstabbed their way to the top eventually sits in an empty office wondering why success tastes like ashes. But the figures who endure, who still move us centuries later, they were different. Marcus Aurelius did not want to be emperor. He wanted to be a philosopher. And precisely because he brought that philosophical depth to the throne, his power transcended his lifetime. Martin Luther King Jr. did not want political power. He wanted justice. And because his purpose was larger than his ambition, his influence became immortal. This is the paradox that intelligent people must embrace. The path to power runs through surrender. Not surrender to others, but surrender of the ego's desperate need to be recognized as the smartest person in the room. When you stop trying to prove your intelligence and start deploying it in service of something greater, when you stop resenting the game and start playing it with integrity, when you stop hiding in your mind and start showing up with your whole self, something miraculous happens. People begin to follow you, not because you demanded it, not because you manipulated them, but because they sense in you something rare, a person whose strength comes not from what they know, but from who they have become. Let me leave you with this. There is an old story, possibly apocryphal, about a student who approached a Zen master and said, "Teach me about power." The master handed him a cup of tea and kept pouring until the tea overflowed onto the table, the floor, the student's hands. The student shouted, "Stop, the cup is already full." And the master replied, "You are like this cup. You are so full of your own ideas about power that there is no room for real power to enter. Empty yourself first." That is the message. Empty yourself of the need to be right. Empty yourself of the fantasy that intelligence alone will carry you. Empty yourself of the bitterness that comes from watching lesser minds succeed while you stand still. And in that emptiness, in that humility, in that radical willingness to engage with life as it actually is, you will find something far greater than power. You will find freedom, the freedom to act without fear, the freedom to lead without pretension, the freedom to finally become the person your intelligence always promised you could be. If this message reached something deep within you, if it named something you have felt but never quite articulated, then do me a favor. Hit the like button. Leave a comment telling me which part struck you the hardest. Subscribe to this channel because this is only the beginning of the journey. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it today, someone brilliant who has been standing in their own way for too long. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone you care about is to hand them a mirror. This was that mirror. Now go and stop being afraid of your own power.